Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber, and I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball, and I host this show each and every week. Whether you're watching at Inquirer.com, the Inquirer's YouTube channel, X, Facebook, or listening to our podcast on Apple or Spotify, I'm so happy you're here, and I thank you for spending some of your week with us. My guest this week is longtime former St. Louis Cardinals ace pitcher Adam Wainwright. I never covered any of his teams, but I did have some limited interaction with him in the 2013 World Series when I was covering the Boston Red Sox. Mostly from a distance, though, I always thought Wainwright had excellent perspective on the game. And I think he comes through now to a more national audience now that he's an analyst on Fox's baseball telecasts. Initially, I wanted to invite Wainwright to join the show because I wanted to ask him about a former teammate of his, Harrison Bader. They played together in St. Louis for 6 years, including 2021, when Bader won a Gold Glove in center field and had his best season, at least until this year. So if anyone would be able to help me understand Bader's personality, from the cutoff T-shirts and batting practice to the neon pink and purple batting gloves and the "what a gift" slogan that the Phillies have kind of rallied around since they traded for him at the deadline, I figured it would be Wainwright. But as I got to thinking, we had so much more to talk about. For several years, it seemed, every time the Phillies faced the Cardinals, Wainwright would match up against Zack Wheeler. And as pitching duels go, they always lived up to the billing. With Wheeler having surgery this week to treat thoracic outlet syndrome, I had to get Wainwright's thoughts on Wheeler's dominance over the last 5 or 6 years and the challenge that he'll face in coming back from that condition. Wainwright also had some memorable matchups over the years with Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, so we talked about that. And Wainwright runs a charity organization called Big League Impact. And one of his most giving partners over the years has been Aaron Nola, a friend of this show. Schwarber and Harper are friends of the program as well. We've had them as guests. But Nola's the Phillies nominee this year for the prestigious Roberto Clemente Award. And I wanted to ask Wainwright about working with him in the community. And there was a lot more too, so you won't want to miss our conversation. First, though, I'll say this. The Phillies are about to wrap up the regular season with a 3-game series against the Twins at Citizens Bank Park. They've clinched a bye through the wild card round. And if you don't think that's important, or if you'd rather them play in the best-of-3 miniseries instead of getting 5 days rest, well, Bryce Harper strongly disagrees. Here's what Harper said the other day after a game in Arizona. Quote, "I want to clinch the bye, for sure. I think that's the biggest thing for all of us, right? Obviously, there's some guys fighting for some numbers and things like that. But as a team, we need the bye." Asked if the Phillies learned anything from last year when they got the bye and wound up getting bounced in the divisional round by the Mets, Harper said this, quote, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's worked for some teams, obviously, and then there's other teams that have complained about it and things like that. We weren't. I don't think we're going to be one of those teams. We weren't last year. I'm looking forward to having it. I would love a couple of days off, obviously, so looking forward to it. Whether we have a bye, we've just got to play our game. I don't think it matters if you have a bye or not a bye, wild card game or not wild card game. I can't stand the stance of teams saying, oh, well, if we would have just played, I think it's all nonsense. We've got to play our game, understand postseason baseball is a lot different than anything else, be in the right mind frame of going into game 1 of the DS and be ready to roll." Okay, let's pause. Because next week, while the Phillies are on the bye, we're going to have the age-old, rest versus rust debate. Like, is it better to have 5 days off, or is it better to kind of just play through and not let rust develop? There's no denying that a week off can serve as a cooler, so to speak, for a division winner. Teams never go 5 days without playing during the regular season. The closest thing is the All-Star break, and that's only 4 and really 3.5 for players who travel home or go somewhere with their families. So, yeah, it's a challenge for teams that get a bye to stay ready. But I agree with Harper that I don't like hearing teams complain about the downtime. Think of it this way. Would you rather have to win 9 games to advance to the World Series or 7? Would you prefer to have your 3rd or maybe even 4th best starter on the mound to open the division series or be able to line up your best guy for game 1? If you gave me my choice of the 2022 Phillies road to the World Series, which started away from home in St. Louis in a tough wild card series, or the 2025 route, I'd take 2025 every day and take my chances. And that isn't even taking into account what 5 extra days of rest might do to help Trey Turner's hamstring or JT Realmuto's bruised hand. The Phillies will do what they have to do, whether it's scrimmages or longer workouts or whatever, to stay sharp during the bye week. Then they'll start the playoffs at home against whichever team comes through that wild card round. It would be an even bigger advantage if the division series was best of 7 instead of best of 5. But in any case, I think it's still a big advantage. We'll get into that more in our Reporter's Notebook segment, which comes up a little later in the show. And if you stick with me after that, we'll take a question at the end. But right now, let's get right to it. Here's my sit down with Adam Wainwright. Adam Wainwright, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
There are so many reasons why I wanted to have you as our guest here this week. For one thing, the playoffs are coming up. And when I think about your long, distinguished career with the Cardinals, my mind goes to a lot of the great postseason moments, right? From the strikeout of Carlos Beltran to win the pennant in 2006 to closing out the World Series later that year. And you're going to be calling some of the postseason for Fox. So what better time to kind of have you? And there are some intersections between your career and this Phillies team. And I wanted to start with this. You know, you were teammates with Harrison Bader for, I think, about 6 years in St. Louis. He won a Gold Glove behind you in center field. And since he came over to the Phillies at the deadline, you know, he's become a big part of this club. As we sit here, he's hitting like 329. He's got about a 900 OPS. But, you know, it seems like he gets 2 hits a night. But it's really his style, right, that's really kind of stood out. The cutoff T-shirts in batting practice, the neon pink batting gloves, the flow that sticks out from the back of his hat. You know, you saw this guy walking around the clubhouse all those years. And if you don't know him, you're kind of like, what is this all about? What can you give us on Bader and what it was like to play with this guy every day?
Yeah, he's definitely the one that all the like 10, 12, 13-year-old boys are dressing like and wearing their hair like and doing their batting stance like. You know, I always had all the grandmas that loved me. Harrison had all the little leaguers that were, you know, imitating him, and he's always been that way. And that's authentic to who he is. He's got a lot of flair. He's perfect for Philly. Great teammate, great person. But you see how, I mean, every fly ball he catches perfect form. Every single thing he does in the field, batting practice, everything is like, you know, it's so fundamentally sound. He can do all the flair things because he does everything right behind it. You know, it's not just flair with no substance behind it. This is a really quality player. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Pittsburgh 2021 or 2022, one of the best games I ever pitched. I got into a spot where it was later in the game. I knew they were probably warming up somebody in the bullpen. I got a 3-1 count on somebody on it doesn't matter who the hitter. I got a 3-1 count, and I said, all right, we've got a big lead. It's the 8th inning. I turned around. I said, I don't care if they drive this ball. Harrison Bader is going to go catch this. So I know he's looking fastball. I'm just going to locate a little sinker down and away outer half and let him reach out there and try to hit a home run to center. He doesn't have that kind of power, and Harrison's going to go run it down. The guy hit a almost gapper in the left center gap. Harrison went like 150 feet, made this sliding catch into the wall, and we got out of the inning. When I turned around as I was walking on the field, I thought, that's the greatness of Harrison Bader right there. I turned around and I said, I've got a great defense behind me, especially Harrison. How do I get him to hit a ball to him? But, you know, you're talking about a guy who not is just a great player. I think one of the best center fielders we've seen in a long time. But he's so fun in the clubhouse. He brings a life in there. He's always laughing. He's always smiling, and it's real. It's not fake. So I love that guy.
Yeah, you know, I covered the 2013 Red Sox for the Boston Herald. Sorry to bring up a tough World Series memory for you there, but that team was filled with characters. And when I see Bader interact with his teammates since he's been with the Phillies, I'm kind of reminded of like a Johnny Gomes guy, like personality-wise. But, you know, the combination maybe of personality and playing style, like there's a little bit of Shane Victorino in that. Like, is that kind of a fair characterization? Because Bader kind of strikes me as that kind of player who, you know, you sort of have to see him every day and maybe even be around him every day to kind of fully appreciate the impact he has, because it goes beyond just what you get on the field.
Well, I think when you play against Harrison, you look out there and you see the guy with the long locks, and he's doing his thing, and he's doing his little butt waggle when he gets to the plate, and you're going, oh, this guy, man, jeez. But then when you play with him, every single thing he does, you either laugh at or you marvel at. And all of it, because he's always smiling, you're always smiling around him. And in a 162 game season, you just need guys like that. You need people like that in the clubhouse. But, he's just a good guy. He's a good person. He comes from a great family. His mom and dad are amazing people. Um, they're super supportive of him, and he's super supportive of everybody else. He's been in a couple of situations with St. Louis and with the Twins and with the Mets for that matter, where he wasn't playing like he wanted to play. He wasn't getting the opportunity. He knew that he could still play. I mean, he would go like 3 for 3 against a right-hander, and then he would sit the next day against a right-hander. And he's like, "What do I have to do to play against righties?" I think when given the opportunity, he's almost a superstar, if not a superstar type player, and he just needed that opportunity. But he thrives in situations like this. He thrives with a great team around him that is full of great guys like Philly is with Schwarber and Trey Turner and Romuto and those guys. I mean, Wheeler and Nola. It's just a team full of just great people, and that's what makes a great team on the field too, is having a great team off the field.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you're a Georgia guy, Zack Wheeler's a Georgia guy, and you and Zack faced each other a bunch over the years. It seemed like there was a time there, in like 21, 22-ish, where it felt like you guys couldn't avoid matching up against each other. It was always, if it was Phillies Cardinals, there was going to be a Wainwright Wheeler matchup. And I remember a game at Busch Stadium when you threw a complete game, and then he shut you guys out for 7, and it was I think there was a similar game the year before in St. Louis. Zack had surgery this week for thoracic outlet syndrome. I don't know, how well you guys, know each other other than to, on the field across the way, say hello to each other. But, what goes through your mind when you see a guy like him, top of the sport, top of the game, go down with something like that? Because in a lot of ways, you hear thoracic outlet and it sounds even scarier or a little more daunting than even Tommy John. For a guy like him at his peak, what goes through your mind as a former pitcher?
Well, first, let me say he's my favorite pitcher. I mean, he is. He's my favorite pitcher. I said it on the air. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the broadcast. I said it on the air. This is my favorite guy to watch. He's a pitcher's pitcher. He's, nasty fastball, obviously, that he can throw really hard, faster than a lot of people, but not as hard as other people, and gets way more effectiveness with it because he spots it so perfectly. He locates it well. He throws a great breaking ball, a couple of breaking balls off of it. And then all of a sudden he started throwing this nasty split change thing that drops off the table. I mean, the guy is working up, down, in, and out, and he's working deep into the game. He's one of the few pitchers out there throwing 200 plus innings every year. Never missed a start until recently. I mean, the guy is a total stud. And I think, if I'm not wrong about this, I think back in the day, the Cardinals had a chance to trade for him, but the Mets wanted Harrison Bader, and we didn't want to trade Harrison. And this was kind of before Zack took off, but everybody knew Zack was going to take off. So I say all that to say he's my favorite. But when I think about what he's about to go through or just went through, it's important to understand the context behind the pitcher. So if he has had a lot of shoulder injuries, if he's had nerve damage, if he's had, other things, that thoracic outlet syndrome is really, really risky. Now, I don't know Zack to have those things. So I'm thinking that his chances of coming back strong are better than the average guy that has that. But I'm not the right guy to speak on it. But I'll tell you, as far as from a competitor standpoint, you were right. I think I matched up with him. Now, you have to go back and check this, but I think the last 3 times I pitched against the Phillies, I think they were all against Zack.
They were.
And I threw at least 2 complete games.
Yes.
And I think I went 8 once and gave up 1. And I think I'm 0-2.
Yeah.
I'm 0-2 in 3 starts. And the only reason I'm not 0-3 is because Zack went out for the 9th one time and ended up giving up a run to tie it. And it was 1-1. Otherwise, I'd be 0-3 with 2 complete games in an 8-inning performance. Now,
Yeah.
you take that as you want. Like, I pitched great games. There's nothing else I could have done. I mean, one time I gave up 2 home runs to JT, and one time I gave up 2 home runs to Bohm, and I gave up two solos. So both times I think I lost 2-0.
Yeah.
It's like what you can hold the Phillies to 2 runs and throw a complete game. You like your chances. The problem is Zach never gave up. I think he just somewhere along the way just decided he wasn't going to ever give up a run to the Cardinals. So that was fun for me. Yeah, but I love that. I always wanted to go up against him because I always thought, all right, I'm going to shut them out tonight, and we're going to win 1-0. But I knew it was going to be 1-0.
Right. So how does a team, you don't replace Zack Wheeler. So how does a team, get by without him now? Because like their rotation, they still have Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez and Luzardo now and Aaron Nola. And so there's still a lot of guys there who can get you through a series. But, is there a way, like, what do you say, like, about, like, how does a team kind of overcome losing arguably the best pitcher in the sport right now in Zack Wheeler?
Yeah, he would have won the Cy Young for sure. And there's no doubt in my mind that he would have. I mean, I think he's still going to finish top 3 probably, and he's going to miss the whole last month. I'll tell you how you get over it. You have a top 2 Cy Young candidate in Christopher Sanchez, and you have a guy in Ranger Suarez who, if you look at his playoff performances in the past, he has like a sub 1.5 ERA in the postseason. And he gave up a couple runs last year, I think, but this is a battle tested guy. And Luzardo, who I picked before last season to be a top 3 Cy Young candidate, this guy is going to be a force in the postseason. You watch. He's got a power arm, big arm, great breaking ball, an incredible person. I love Luzardo. Jesus Luzardo is just such a good dude, So it was just, I mean, I wanted the Cardinals to trade for Luzardo so bad because I talked to Schumacher when he was managing him in Miami. I said, what do you think about this Luzardo guy? Because he's got tremendous, tremendous stuff. He goes, yeah, but he's even a better person. He's a better person. I went straight to Mazalok and I said, hey, let's make a move for this guy. Everybody's talking about Sandy. Let's get this guy before he blows up. And then, it didn't work out. But he's going to be a force for y'all. But look, you have the probably the best lineup in baseball going in there to support these pitchers that have been there, done that. Everybody's comfortable in the biggest spots. You play in Philly already. There's nothing that's going to make you nervous. That's a big market. The fans are super tough, but they're very loving. I've never seen that fan base jump behind a team more than they are right now. This team. I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard a Philly fan tell me that yet. They have to go way back to the early 90s to get a fan base behind a team like that. So they're fun to watch. I think they can do it. I picked them a month ago. I picked them before Wheeler got out. I picked them to win the World Series just because, I mean, all the things I talked about. But the last couple of years, everybody expected them to. This year, I think everybody, like, even though they're one of the best teams in baseball, it felt like everybody's going, oh, the Dodgers are going to do it, or, the Yankees are going to do it, or somebody else like that. These other big guys. I'm going, everybody's kind of sleeping on the Phillies. So I think especially actually that they've lost Wheeler, it's going to make those guys play harder.
You know Aaron Nola, I think, pretty well, right? I mean, you've worked with him through Big League Impact, which is the organization that you created to raise money for various charitable causes, whether it's to combat childhood hunger or promote clean water or anything else. First, tell me a little bit more about Big League Impact and some of the initiatives that, you guys maybe you're working on right now.
Yeah, thanks for asking, man. So Big League Impact was started 2013. I started it with my brother. My wife and I had like recently become enthralled with basic essential needs charities. We had really caught the bug of alleviating food insecurity or clean water problems or shelter problems or a lack of clothing or a lack of medicine, these things that we take for granted. We walk into the pantry, we can eat like kings, compared to what most of the world is eating. So we can go to our toilets and drink cleaner water out of the toilet than most of the world is drinking. So when we started to really look into some of the charitable things, I just really felt empowered and challenged to spread that to as many people as I could. I wanted to tell those stories. I wanted to go on those mission trips and show them the pictures, and that's what we started doing at 13. We've raised $11.5 million for charities across the world. We've done a lot of stuff in St. Louis, but our other big initiative at Big League Impact is empowering big league players to go out into their communities, and whatever it is, use their platforms, because their platforms aren't as big forever. This is a pretty finite window that you get to be kind of a star and have people really paying attention to what you care about. And so we really want to empower athletes to go out in their communities. We want to. So many people come to us and say, "I want to help. I just don't know how to get started." Perfect.
Mm.
Let us help you. And so we just ask that question: what is it that keeps you up at night? What do you think about when you wake up in the morning? Who do you want to serve? And if it's something that fits in our mold, or even if it's not, we try to help in every way we can to get those people out there serving it. And that's really what we want to be known for at Big League Impact. We want to be known for the organization that is all about servanthood and servant leaders, and that's what we try to do.
That's amazing. And Aaron Nola's he's been he's the Phillies nominee this year for the Roberto Clemente Award. He's been very active with you guys, I think, and in doing a lot of things. How did you kind of get hooked up with him?
Just the same way as Zach, just pitching against him, just
Yeah.
appreciating the competitor on the other side. He pitched one of the best games I've ever seen in person one time, through a complete game against us, and like under 100 pitches, and just every single thing was at the knees or below, and that big breaking ball off of it, great changeup to go in, out, up, down. Same way I talked about Zach, that's what Aaron was doing, and I just love the way he competes. He's got that quiet confidence out there, and when he's healthy and and pitching sharp, there's really only a couple people out there that can compare to him. He's just really that good a pitcher. He's a pitcher, not a thrower. There's so many throwers. He's a pitcher's pitcher. But just talking, we get in passing there, said, "Hey man, I'm a big fan, dude. I love watching you." And it's okay to do that. I think every now and then, as a competitor, you look over there and go, "I love the way this guy pitches, man. I want to do some things like that." Or, "Man, I can't wait to talk to him about what is his changeup grip." And you don't ask everybody like that.
Right.
You ask the Wheelers, the Nolas, the Kershaws, the Scherzers, the Grinkeys, the Verlanders, those kinds of guys. But you don't just go around asking every single pitcher, "Hey, tell me about your changeup or your curveball, or what are you thinking on this?" I never did anyways. I asked the guys that I was trying to, really learn something from, and just had great conversations over the years. And he has a heart. He has a heart to serve, like I do, and we want to make a difference in this world. And he's been a great help with Big League Impact. I mean, it's routine where we'll all of a sudden we're kind of in a bind. We don't know how we're gonna, do this or this, and all of a sudden we get a check in the mail from Aaron Nola. It's pretty special.
The thing that has always amazed me about him is how, he's like the ultimate Mr. Reliable, right? Like, he went like 7 seasons without missing a start, and this year it's been a little bit of a rough go. He had the ankle injury and then the fractured rib, and he's trying to kind of find his way through the second half of the season. And, I don't know that this is necessarily the case with him, but, as someone like, you pitched a lot of innings for a lot of years. You were known for the curveball and you were known for various things, but I wonder how often over the course of time you had to maybe change your pattern, your usage pattern, or maybe learn to attack some of the same hitters in a different way. And I think a little bit of that is what Nola might be going through, but I wonder whether that's something that you get to that stage of your career and, maybe you do have to kind of rethink some things about how you're attacking a lot of the same hitters who've seen you over and over.
Yeah, sometimes you do. I mean, it's a game of adjustments, right? And the guys who stick around for a long time are the ones that are willing to adjust. They're ones that are willing to change something if they need to. I think sometimes you overthink things. Like I'll point this back at me in 2019 the big craze was launch angle, and all the hitters were pitching, were swinging up, and it was kind of like, all right, well, how do we combat that? How do we pitch that? And it was like, well, you got to throw the ball up in the zone, and so the first half of 2019, I had like I don't know, 4.5, 5 ERA through the first half. I'm like, this doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work for me. And then I've realized, guys, even with the launch angle guys, they're not hitting knee high strikes over the fence. They're launching balls that are thigh high. They're launching balls that are thigh to belt. I'm like, well, I don't pitch there anyways. And so the second half, I started throwing the ball down,
Right.
and started doing back what I was doing. And so sometimes I say that because sometimes it's okay, I tried that and that wasn't who I was. And so go back to what you do. And sometimes it's just looking closely at why are they scoring runs? And I think if you look at in Aaron's situation, I think if you really looked closely, he doesn't have to do anything different except for the execution was just a little better before. Is the execution uh, when I got older was a little better before, and so then I had to go back and lock in. All right, this is what I do, and really focus down and really focus on executing a pitch, and then I was fine. And I think Aaron, you see the great games he pitches, it's when he's executing, and the ones he's not, and that's just the way it is. Especially when you lose a mile or two off your fastball, then you just have to be a little bit more fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just becomes execution.
Yeah. All right, we'll do a quick lightning round. Two hitters I want to ask you about because you faced them a good bit during your career. First, Kyle Schwarber. I looked it up. He was 5 for 33 against you, 1 homer, 11 strikeouts, 7 walks. But I think it's safe to say that in 2025, he is a better, more complete hitter now than he was for a lot of that time that you faced him with those Cardinals-Cubs showdowns. What do you remember about, going head-to-head with Schwarber?
That's a great question. I love how you posed that. Like, oh, if you were still pitching in your prime, he would hit you now. I heard what you did there. But I can speak to this a little bit because Kyle saw me. He hit his home run off me on a curveball towards the end of my career. But, early in his career, you could flood him with breaking balls and he couldn't hit them.
Hmm.
I mean, he just couldn't. He wasn't able to. Not good ones, anyways. You could throw that curveball at the bottom of the zone, and then off of that, you threw the fastball up, or ran it off, or ran it in, or whatever. But he still was going to crush mistakes, and he still. I mean, look, if you look at his numbers, if you locate a breaking ball down the zone, he's still not going to crush it like that. Not routinely, and no one does. I mean, it's not just him. No one does. The thing that Kyle is so good at is he capitalizes on every mistake. And he knows exactly when to ambush. I mean, for a while there it was like, all right, first pitch of the game, watch out, he's going to ambush. But after a while it was like, all right, what's the game situation? Who's on deck? Who's pitching? Who's up in the bullpen? He's thinking through all these things. And I talked to him about it this year. The pitching nowadays is gotten to a point where we have more throwers than we have pitchers. Does he hit balls routinely that are paint on the corners for home runs? No. I mean, occasionally he will because he's a great hitter and he's got tons of power. But what he told me, and I agree with him, pitchers make more mistakes now. They just do. And it's about heaving the ball, and he doesn't care. Kyle Schwarber doesn't care how hard you throw it. He doesn't care how hard you spin it. If you throw it right down the middle, he's going to smash it. He's going to smash it. But he's such a good eye at the plate. He's not swinging at a lot of those pitches that are on the black because he's got a great eye. And he's not swinging at those pitches that are a ball off the plate either side because he's got such a great eye. And so he works himself into great counts, and he gets mistake pitches more because he's in better counts. He's really a true awesome hitter.
Yeah. Anything that comes to mind when you think about facing Bryce Harper? I think he got you once in the regular season and once in the postseason. But anything kind of come to mind when you think about all those, any of those matchups with him? He was pretty young in 2012 when he was a rookie when you guys played him in the playoffs.
Yeah, and he was one of the most dynamic players I've ever seen in 2012. I'll say this: I'd still contend this to this day. Bryce Harper, when he is locked in, is the best hitter on the planet. I really think that. He's the hardest out. He covers the whole plate. He can drive it to pole. He can. There's nothing he can't hit, speed wise, height wise. When he's going great when he covers that outside corner. When he's covering that outer third and he's driving it to left center, you're like, oh crap, this is going to be a really really tough series. Because he goes through waves where when he's covering that kind of stuff, he has to get himself out because you're really not going to get him out with pitches in the zone. He's not going to chase out of the zone, and he goes pole to pole. And I just think, I mean, he's been a tough out for me. His whole career on me, he was really really tough. But I still think he's as good or better than any hitter in the baseball when he's on a heater. I think how do you stretch those segments out where he's locked in? How do we stretch those out? Because we've seen him. He's a multiple-time MVP, right? He is a special player. He's a once-in-a-generational type player. I still think he could be better. I do. That's a scary thought because I think when he's going at his best, he's the best in the game.
You're synonymous with the Cardinals, of course, and I think also with Yadier Molina, your longtime catcher. Obvious question, maybe, but you hear about how pitchers felt about throwing to Yadi all those years. The advantage the Cardinals had with Yadi behind the plate, and I wonder if the same thing applies to the Phillies with JT. Pitchers swear by him. Zack Wheeler says, I never shake him. When you see JT and you see the impact that he has, your mind must go to Yadi and what he did for the Cardinals for all those years.
Yeah, and I got to pitch to JT for the WBC as well.
Right.
And he was my teammate there.
Right.
He moves very similar to him. He thinks like him. He's smart like that. I mean, they're both incredibly gifted athletically. I mean, JT's for a while there was one of probably the fastest catcher in the big leagues. But as far as overall hitter as a catcher too, probably the best hitter overall as a catcher that we've seen in my era. He's just a great player, great arm, great block. I mean, the ability he has to block a ball and keep it right in front of him, that's a real gift. That's something that his instincts are so great. Him and Yadi are the two best I've ever seen at being able to move and know what a ball's going to do and keep it directly right in front of him. That's a real gift, and that's a real gift to the Philly pitching staff too, because to the manager over there at Philly, Robbie. You just don't get players like that change games like that. I mean, and even if his offense has dropped a little bit, his defense is so great. His pitch calling is so great. His mojo with the pitching staff is so great. He is such a stud and a very underrated part of that Philly team.
Okay, as a way to wrap this up, and Adam, again, we thank you so much for your time. You're going to come up on the Hall of Fame ballot in a few years, and by that time, I think we're going to be having a really good discussion about what a Hall of Fame starting pitcher looks like anymore. Because I see a guy like Johan Santana fall off the ballot after a couple of years, and Felix Hernandez barely scrapes 20% in his first year on the ballot. And I think, do our standards have to change here? Because starters are used so much differently these days than they were, even when you first broke in, and certainly the generation before you. I've talked to other pitchers about this. I talked to Cole Hamels, talked to David Cohn recently about it, and just other pitchers about, we could probably do a whole entire podcast on this topic, but I wonder whether we need to rethink how we judge starting pitchers for the Hall of Fame. You finished your career with 200 wins. 200 is definitely the new 300. I don't know how many guys are even going to get to 200 anymore. So are we looking at, do we have to kind of look at how we judge starters and what a Hall of Fame starter looks like a little more differently than we did, let's say 10, 15 years ago?
Well, I mean, if you take a guy like Clayton Kershaw, who, what did he just end with, 222 or something like that, 220-some wins, 220-some. Zach Greinke, 220-something, maybe a little bit more. Verlander's got 260, but is he going to get to 300? I don't know. It's going to be close, and I know he wants to. Scherzer's going to into with the I don't know what, 250 maybe.
Yep. And that's really the group, right? Like those four. And then you say, well, like who's the next Hall of Fame starting pitcher, right?
Well, so it's going to be interesting. Lester's on there next year. That's going to be, or is it next year? Or?
I think it's Cole Hamels is next year. I forget if Lester is next year or the year before.
Lester's a few years after that.
Yeah.
But I was actually encouraged when he got 22% last year, because I was thinking, like if he, as great as he was in Seattle for so long, like he had so many strikeouts. He was one of the best players in the game. No, I'll get him. Can I get your the golf clubs out back? Perfect. All right, great. Thanks. Sorry. I got to go get kids in just a second here.
Yeah, no worries.
What I was encouraged, because if he falls off, even though I think he's got 150 wins maybe, but he won a Cy Young. He led the league in strikeouts for a lot of times, and a lot of people consider him one of the better pitchers, of that generation. So I'm just thinking, all right, if he gets 22%, that gives us hope. That gives Lester hope. That gives Cole Hamels some hope. And if those guys have hope, then I have hope, because I feel like I'm in that area. Those guys were the ones that I was always competing. I know I'm gonna break rules here, but I'm gonna show
No, you're good.
I'm gonna show you who I consider the best pitchers of my generation. Right there.
Yeah.
Scherzer, Kershaw, Verlander, and Greinke.
That's awesome.
Those were the guys that I worked out harder for. Those were the guys that made me, get up early and work out when I didn't want to. And, I feel like they pushed me to be better. And so some of these guys, all four of those guys in my mind are I don't, you can say what you want, but I think they're first ballot Hall of Famers compared to what we know about. None of those guys have 300 wins.
Yeah.
None of them do. And I think to ask us to consider that we should think the way that we used to think is not fair, because that's not how they use pitchers anymore. And so, guys aren't pitching every fourth day. They're taken out after 5 innings, 6 innings now. Like you said, maybe nobody ever gets to 200 wins again. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know these things.
Yeah.
But I think we got to think differently about it. I might be a little biased, but I think we might too. Hey, I got to run. I'm sorry, man.
You bet, Adam. This was a lot of fun, man. We'll pick this up, I'm sure, another time. But I always admired watching you. I love your analysis on Fox. Have a good time in the postseason this year. Maybe we'll see you in the World Series. And thank you again for joining Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Okay. All right. See you guys.
Thanks. Of course, I want to thank Adam Wainwright again for joining me this week. It's time now for our Reporter's Notebook segment, and I'll bring in my Inquirer colleague, Lachlan March, fresh from covering a game last night at Citizens Bank Park. Lachlan, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Since it's been a while since the last time you were here, I'll start with this. You were there at Dodger Stadium on September 15th when the Phillies won the NL East. I've covered a bunch of those clinching parties over the years with the Phillies back in the day and then the Red Sox. And heck, we've had 8 of them, right? I think over the last 3 years here with the Phillies. So I can kind of say that they're all a little bit different. I'm sure by now a lot of people have seen the clips that went around social media or some highlights from TV, but it did happen at like 1 o'clock in the morning in the East when they were celebrating in LA. So I thought, you could maybe take us into that cramped visiting clubhouse at Dodger Stadium and tell us what were some of the things that you saw and heard, and what kind of stood out to you, if you could kind of paint a picture for what that night was like.
Yeah, it's funny because I really wasn't expecting the Phillies to clinch in LA. I assumed they would the day before, so I wasn't like packed for it or anything. Because I think either they needed to win or the Mets needed to lose. And it was like a totally unexpected. I'd packed way before, and I was on the plane and the Mets came back, and I'm like, wow, okay, so this is going to happen in LA. And I'd never covered a clincher on the road before. I've been there at home several times and the road, it's a little bit different. Like you mentioned, it's cramped in there. So it's really small, kind of harder to navigate and harder to try to conduct interviews because like there's so much happening in there. Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of concentrated in the center. The guys are, they had the beer bong was a new addition this year. Yeah, the funnel. And like I know Bryce was drinking apple juice through it, so not everyone was drinking beer through it. But I don't know whose idea that was, but that I haven't seen that one before, and that was kind of popular. It was funny to see John Middleton partake. That was pretty funny. But yeah, so that's all concentrated in the middle, and I'm just kind of on the outside trying to like get clips for social media or also talk to people because I have a job, I still have a job to do. Yeah, so just like pulling people into the side and like yelling over the music. But yeah, it was pretty it was a good environment. It seemed like it was a bit of a release because after the night before it was a bit of a letdown from what I understand. Obviously I wasn't there, but I know they were waiting for the result of the Mets game. So I think it was, and then the game itself in LA, the first game was so wild that I think it was also blowing off a bit of steam from that. So yeah, it was a lot of champagne and beer flying everywhere. I had, like I said, I didn't pack, so I didn't have like extra pair of clothes. So I like had to buy like a poncho from Target to like protect my clothes because I was like, I don't want to get these messed up, and they do get messed up, especially in like in a clubhouse that is that small, because you can't really avoid it. But yeah, so it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, as you said, most of the last few years have been at home. I mean, I remember the one in Houston when they clinched the playoffs for the first time in 2022, and then they celebrated in St. Louis when they won the wild card series on the road. But yeah, most of them have been at home, and like my first stop when I get home after those is like straight to the laundry room. Everything goes right into the wash. You're just trying to get that smell out, and it's not just the champagne or the beer; it's also the cigar smell because they light up cigars. And like I always tell people too, especially with the division, like if you want to go nuts, because to me, winning your division over 162 games, by far the hardest team goal in baseball. And maybe in sports because the season is so long and there are so many games. To me, it's like, well, do you have to do it after every single round of the play? Like, congratulations, you won 2 in the wild card round. You're going to go crazy. To me, you can sort of lose it a little bit with some of that. But like, if you want to go nuts after winning your division, by all means, because I know that, as a sport, we reward division winners a little less than we used to. Because they do still have to play multiple rounds of playoffs and whatnot to get into the World Series. And your reward is maybe a bye in the division, in the wild card round and some extra home games. But if you lose game 1, you're still up against it after all of that. But I just do think that winning your division is so difficult to do. And, more power to them if they want to go crazy and blow off steam after doing that. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's an accomplishment, and I think they deserve to celebrate it. So yeah, it's definitely cool to be in there and to see it. But yeah, I mean,
not the most conducive working environment.
No.
So as we sit here, the Phillies have only a few regular season games left. They clinched a bye in the wild card round, and they're pretty much locked into the number 2 seed in the National League. Most of what they have left to accomplish this weekend are individual goals. Most notably, right, Kyle Schwarber is closing in on Ryan Howard as the franchise's single-season home run king. And, you turned to me last night early in the game and said, you think he's going to do it? Like, do you think he's going to catch Ryan Howard? And I said, no, but like, I don't put anything past Kyle Schwarber, right? Because we've seen him like do this. Like, he'll get hot and hit homers in bunches. And it's funny, our photographer, Liz Robertson, she texted me before the game and she said, like, any milestones I should watch for. And I said, well, Schwarber's closing in on Ryan Howard's record. He's not going to do it tonight, but like every homer he hits now is significant. And then he hits the second one in the game on Wednesday night. And I thought, oh my gosh, like what if he does it tonight? Like what if he has another 4-homer game and ties Ryan Howard? Like we've seen him do this. So that's going to be obviously something to watch. for you, I'm sure as well, what are you kind of focused on here in the final 3 days of the season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every time Kyle comes up to bat, it's going to be kind of a holding your breath kind of moment for the rest of the regular season. I'm definitely I think the main thing is like seeing everyone stay healthy. And if Harper comes back good, he's missed now the time of speaking 2 games with illness, and I haven't even seen him. I don't think he's been at the park at all. So hopefully he's doing all right. And obviously JT, the Phillies like kind of avoided disaster with the foul ball off his hand, but he's, from what Rob has said, he's in a bit of pain and he had trouble gripping the bat right after it happened. So he's obviously a huge part of this. So I think just seeing everyone come back healthy and stay healthy over these last 4 games will be big.
Yeah, let's talk about the injuries, because since our last show, the Phillies got Alec Boehm and Edmundo Sosa back as they expected they would. It sounds like Trey Turner's getting closer, but he's not back yet from the hamstring strain, and they don't seem like they're in any rush to, force him into a regular season game if he's not at or close to 100% in terms of running. And now, like you said, JT Realmuto dealing with a bruised finger on his hand. There's no question the bye will help them both. Are you, if you're the Phillies, are you more or less concerned about one or the other, just in terms of getting them back and getting them back full strength?
In terms of Trey or JT?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to answer that question because I think they're both so vital to like this process. Although I will say Marshawn has kind of impressed me so far, and what I saw in LA with him coming up clutch when JT was sick that day, he's shown that he can rise to the occasion and he can gun down runners too. And if JT is hurt, he can still be a part of those pregame meetings and share his like expertise and knowledge with the pitchers, and so he's still going to be a part of that. But I mean, and then Trey, I mean, they've done well without him, but it's hard to replace a guy who's hitting the way that he's hitting and what he does on defense this year and that sort of thing. So I think both of them will be vital to a long trip in October.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I see it, and to be clear, like the Phillies are expecting them both to be healthy, available to play in game 1. And look, the bye is huge in this regard, because like the way I see it, right, like they're telling us that JT Realmuto has a bruise, which presumably will heal in time. Now he has 5 extra days for it to heal beyond the end of the regular season. So, because they're going to start now on October 4th, not September 30th. So I think, that to me is like sort of, I don't want to call it like a straightforward process, but like bruises heal and they just take time. But Trey Turner's legs are so important to everything that he does. His whole game is predicated on speed. And he really got back to that this year, being that dynamic, athletic game changer who, I think he was going to be in the top maybe 3 on my MVP ballot before he got injured almost 3 weeks ago. Look, we saw it last year when he came back. Now, granted, it was a little bit more of it was a grade 2 strain. This is more mild. It's a grade 1. But, he was kind of inhibited on the bases in the beginning. I think it was like 15 or 16 games before he attempted a stolen base. He didn't try to run right away. And I think it also probably affected his defense a little bit, too, in terms of just like getting in the right positions to create good hops and things like that. Now, that was June when he came back last year. So I think he was being more intentional about, pushing it and kind of easing his way back in. And he did really swing the bat well when he first came back. But, to me, he's the one I'm watching because, like I said, I don't think that they're going to push him into a game this weekend if he's not comfortable with that. So it could be potentially, until October 4th before he, faces, I know he's been facing minor leaguers in live BP, but close to a month it could be before he gets back into a game situation. So I'm really watching that because you want him back, but you also want him to be himself.
Yeah. I mean, and a month is obviously a really long time, especially for a hitter. But one thing that, gives me a bit more confidence that if that does happen, he will be able to adjust is how Alec Boehm and Edmundo Sosa, they just kind of fell right back in. And obviously Sosa had the 3-homer night can't get much better than that after some time off. So, and they haven't been going on rehab assignments, obviously, because of Lehigh's, their season is over. So, I think the Phillies have kind of figured something out here with like these live at bats, and they're helping the work that they're doing behind the scenes is helping these guys get ready. So, I mean, from what we've seen from injuries, I know it's not quite as long as a month. I think Edmundo was down for 12 days or something. You know, I mean, that gives you a little bit more confidence that he will be able to come back at the plate specifically, and kind of pick right back where he left off.
Yeah. You know, they've called up 3 minor leaguers to kind of throw live BP to Trey Turner. Tommy McCollum, Daniel Harper, and Andrew Walling, I believe, are the 3. And Sosa stepped in a little bit. I guess it was Tuesday or Wednesday. He stepped in on those. I guess it had to have been Tuesday because Wednesday night he hit the 3 homers.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said something funny after the 3 homer game. He said, yeah, I want to thank the minor league guys for coming up. And I kind of had to chuckle to myself, like, yeah, they got him hot, right? I mean, they whatever they did, they threw a really good live BP because they got Edmundo Sosa hot. And if I'm Trey Turner, I'm like, I want to face those guys more and more this weekend because it worked for Sosa. Maybe it can work for Turner as well. We'll have time next week on our playoff preview show to talk about potential opponents. We'll know. We'll have a little bit more clarity, whether it'll be the Mets or the Reds or who knows, maybe even the Diamondbacks facing the Dodgers in that 3-6 series out in LA. I think that's how it's going to be. The Dodgers still have to wrap up the NL West, but they're closing in on that. So maybe we wrap up this week by, taking a little bit of a dive into a potential playoff roster. And I'll ask you to put your manager cap on and make a few decisions. First, who are your 3 starting pitchers in the division series?
I'm going with the 3 lefties. I'm going with Sanchez, Suarez, and Luzardo.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to, right? I mean, Rob Thompson keeps saying some of it will be matchup dependent. But like I went through the numbers on the show last week, and I think I wrote it in the Inquirer as well. And pretty much every NL playoff team is way better against righties than they are against lefties. The Dodgers would be the one team where you might think about it because they've got, Ohtani, Freeman, and Muncy, the 3, lefties in the middle of their, big lefties in their lineup. But I just think with the way Luzardo in particular has pitched relative to Nola, you have to go Sanchez, Suarez, Luzardo. All right, let's assume they go 14 position players for the division series and 12 pitchers. You've got your starting 9, Schwarber, Realmuto, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bohm, we'll say Bader, Marsh, Kepler. You have Nick Castellanos and Edmundo Sosa and Rafael Marchand as the backup catcher. That's 12. Are you going to go with Otto Kemp and Weston Wilson for the last 2 spots? Or, like me, do you want Johan Rojas on this roster to run and play some defense late in the game for when you decide to use Castellanos as a pinch hitter?
I do want Rojas on the roster, I think, but I want Kemp as well. I think those are my 2. Like, I think the way that Kemp has been hitting and some power has started to come for him. I think it's hard not to include him. But yeah, Rojas, I think can be a difference maker in terms of his defense and speed. I think it would help a lot in those situations, like you said, when you pinch hit with Nick, and we saw that in LA when he pinch hit early in the game, and then the Phillies had the lead, and in that situation, you want your best defense out there, but you've taken out Marsh. So what do you do now? But having Rojas would give you flexibility to do that and do a double switch and put Rojas in center.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's almost a 2-player switch when you put Castellanos in there as a pinch hitter, because I do think you want Rojas's defense in the game after Castellanos hits, and then if he reaches base, you want Rojas's speed as well. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. We'll see how they go. Rojas did miss the last couple of games of the AAA season with a quad strain, or I should say quad soreness. I think they found it was not a strain, but that he just had some soreness in there. He's going to go to their camp in Lehigh, their Stay Hot camp, and we'll see if they decide that he's healthy enough. I would imagine we'll see him here next week for a workout and whatnot, and they'll see if he's healthy enough to help them in the playoffs.
Yeah, should be
all
interesting.
right. Lachlan, thank you. We'll pause the conversation here. And as I said, maybe we'll pick it up next week when we know a little bit more about potential opponents for the division series. But Thank you again for doing this, and I will see you this weekend at the ballpark.
Yeah, see you. Thanks so much for having me again.
Thank you. Okay, it's time now for our last segment. We call this Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. There are a bunch of ways that you can join the conversation. Drop me an email at slauber@inquirer.com. Reach out on the social media platform of your choice, X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or drop me a question in the comments section on YouTube as well. This week's question comes from Christopher Lewis. I hope I'm saying that right. At Christo282707789 on X. And he asks, is there a scenario where Aaron Nola could come into a playoff game in the 6th, 7th inning and be effective, or is that just not realistic? Christopher, thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. Nola has taken the mound 294 times in the big leagues, including the postseason, and all 294 have been starts. You have to go back to July 6th, 2014, 1 month after Nola got drafted, to find his one and only relief appearance as a pro when he came into a game in Clearwater behind a rehabbing Cliff Lee. That is it. Now, I bring that up not to say that Nola absolutely could not do it if he had to, but I can say with a pretty good degree of certainty that Rob Thompson wouldn't put him in that position, especially in the postseason, because you have no idea how long Nola would need to get ready in the bullpen. I suspect he'd have to go through a starter's routine, so you'd need to give him advance notice that he was coming in the game. It's not like they moved him to the bullpen in September and gave him a chance to get acclimated out there. If you're talking about moving any starter to the pen, it would be Walker Buehler or Taijuan Walker. And honestly, the feeling that I've gotten is that Walker is much more comfortable with coming out of the pen than Buehler is. I asked Walker, Taijuan that is, about it last week in Arizona, and he said, yeah, after developing a routine earlier this season when he got moved to the bullpen, he thinks he has a foundation, like a base, that he can draw from when, and maybe if, he goes back to the bullpen in the playoffs. I'm not saying the Phillies would want to use Walker in any kind of high leverage situation, but if they get a short start for whatever reason from one of their starters, they could always turn to him for, 2 innings here or there as a bridge to get to the real relievers. I don't imagine they would consider Nola for that kind of thing. And besides, even if they go with the 3 lefties, Suarez and Luzardo after Sanchez in game 1 in the divisional round, they'll need a 4th starter in the NLCS, and that most certainly would be Aaron Nola. All right, we'll leave it there and tell you first that you won't want to miss our playoff preview show next week. I'm super excited about the special guest that we have lined up, and I'll tell you only that you won't want to miss it. Also, all past episodes of Phillies Extra, I think we're up to 33 of them now, are available by going to inquirer.com and clicking on the Inquirer Live tab or on the Inquirer's YouTube and Facebook pages. That's always an easy way to catch up on any shows or interviews that you might have missed. You can also listen to this episode and many others on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, please give us a follow and rate and review us. It really does help, especially because we want to keep this show going for a long, long time. Thanks again to my guest, Adam Wainwright. Thanks to Lachlan March. And as always, to our producer, Angelica Irizarry, for her great work each week, often on short notice, to help us put all this together. Most of all, thanks so much to you out there for listening, watching, and of course for reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. We'll see you next week.